Hello, I'm John DeCook for Building Geek Cred, brought to you by the Werewolf and Borg. And on this episode, I'm incredibly excited because I'm looking at the brand new 2021 edition of HeroQuest. If you're familiar with older board games, this actually came out in 1989 originally. And this is actually a repackage of the same game with much higher quality in the figure sculpts and some additional changes to gameplay that are going to make it pretty exciting. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of HeroQuest before we get to the unboxing. Now, HeroQuest has a couple of things going for it that most board games don't. It's in fact a game system. So it's not just here's your board game you play. This actually gives you component pieces, a board that's the basic layout of a dungeon, but it gives you tile overlays, gives you doors, traps, furniture, all sorts of things you can include in that dungeon. So the game comes with its own set of 10 adventures with all the rules that you need to play the game. You've got one person takes on the role of the dungeon overlord, controlling all the monsters and attempting to defeat the heroes, and then 1 to 4 other players each take on the role of one hero. And that hero does grow and evolve over the course of those 10 adventures. You'll earn gold, you'll buy better equipment, you'll improve your character as you go and make it a little bit easier on you, tougher on the monsters, but as it evolves, as you might guess, the quests get a little more challenging. So this was incredibly groundbreaking back in 1989 when it came out. There were not a whole lot of games like this. As a matter of fact, this is the very first one versus many game that I can actually name, let alone the fact that it was mass marketed. I mean, this is a high fantasy adventure game. Just look at the box. You've got barbarians, elves, orcs, wizards, mummies, skeletons, and this was sold at Walmart. Okay? Please understand what we're talking about here. Things were still kind of growing and expanding at that point, and a board game like this had never been seen before. And what was even more innovative, which they included in this reboot, is the fact that they had additional quest packs. So there was a quest pack called Keller's Keep. There was also a quest pack called Return of the Witch Lord. Now there were several others released, but these two were the easiest to get a hold of. As it went, they released fewer and fewer as the game was dwindling in popularity. So you can try to find against the Ogre Horde. It's going to be very difficult. There's an Elf quest pack. That one's astonishingly difficult to get a hold of and grossly expensive if you ever do happen to find one. But when they did this re-release in 2021, they released the quests with it as well, which I think is great. So what they did when they went through and did these 10 additional quests in each pack, so now with this package, you've got 30 full adventures pre-made and ready to go. No planning on your part, just read a little bit, get it set up and go. Keller's Keep focused on more standard monsters, goblins, orcs, and at the time the original was called Fimmers. Now, I don't remember exactly what they're called, but they're these kind of fish things. In Witch Lord, they focused on the undead. So you've got more skeletons, more zombies, more mummies in this one, as opposed to this one. So this is a little more supernatural. In any case, each of these, again, a complete set of 10 adventures. You've got 30 here to play straight out of these boxes. And that doesn't even count the additional material that they put into this. As most crowdfunding things do these days, they added what they call stretch goals. There's a whole extra box of figures. And that expands on the mythology, gives you actually some new characters to play, where the main box has the 4 archetypal characters. You can see you've got a barbarian there front and center, swinging a gigantic sword. You've got a wizard here, go ahead casting a magic spell. You've got an elf in the background there with a bow. You've got a dwarf fighter somewhere in the front. There we go, about there. And each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. So the barbarian has no magic, neither does the dwarf, but the barbarian's a great fighter. Very strong, rolls lots of dice, does lots of damage. The dwarf is also a skilled fighter, but has some additional skills that nobody else in the party has, which makes them incredibly unique. Now there's a total of 4 sets of spells in the game. They're themed along the ideas of earth, air, fire, and water. So the elf has a little bit of magic. The elf gets 1 set of cards, plus they're a decent fighter. The wizard is a very weak fighter. Can't wear great armor, but has 3 different sets of spells, so they have lots of spells they can use during the course of the game. So in this way, the things are balanced. Well, this set introduces some completely new characters that will play totally differently than what's in this box. So it adds a whole new dimension to the game as well. Plus they've added a lot of additional figures of the basic monsters and even some new monsters in that set as well. So we're going to take a look at everything that's in here in just 1 minute. So let's talk a little bit about the original HeroQuest pictured here. This game was by Milton Bradley, but with development and figure sculpting by Games Workshop. Now you may know Games Workshop from their huge tabletop war games called Warhammer and Warhammer 40K. They've got several others as well, but those are their main product lines. So to get them to come in and actually sculpt figures for you, quite the coup. And actually quite amazing to go into a mass-marketed board game like this. Again, this is 1989 this was released, so we're talking very late 80s, early 90s. For something like this to be on the market, where you've got a whole set of plastic figures, 4 different heroes, and then you've got goblins, orcs, fimmers, chaos warriors, chaos warlock, a gargoyle, mummies, skeletons, and zombies. Absolutely astonishing to me that something like this ever got made, let alone was sold at Walmart, of all places. But you could actually walk in and buy this off the shelf at any major retailer during those days. So it was pretty amazing to me that this ever got made. That's also the first game I'm aware of that used a one versus many system. So one person takes on the role of the overlord of the dungeon, and you've got complete control over all the monsters. You need to decide where they move, when they attack, what's going to happen as far as that goes. A scenario book in here gives you 10 pre-made adventures, and you follow those to build. But what you do is you take a standard board, that's the dungeon layout, and you put tile overlays as well as actually 3-dimensional objects, tables, torture racks, weapons racks, doors that are closed to begin with, on the board. Now anything the characters would walk over, like a set of stairs, was not 3-dimensional, it was just a tile, as were tiles that gave different changes to rooms. Some would overlap the pre-printed walls and turn into one big room. Some would just change the tiles on the floor. You had individual pieces that were tiles that were traps, like pits you could fall into and so forth. But you laid the board out exactly as it showed. You put dead ends where there were dead ends so the heroes knew they couldn't walk down there anymore. And by doing that, you would narrow the scope of the dungeon to some extent. Now, what's really interesting, besides the fact that all of this happened, this is actually a full game system. So not just you're sitting and playing a board game. You know, you bring out Asari, Monopoly, what have you. You put the board out, you put your pieces out, you play. In this, the overlord of the dungeon could actually design their own adventures. Use those tiles, use the board, use the pieces, build whatever their imagination let them build. So when you're done with the first 10 adventures, you're still enjoying the game, go ahead and play more. Additionally, in this, the heroes get to evolve as they go. Again, kind of a unique thing for a board game. They were sort of mimicking traditional role-playing games in this, where your character starts off with a certain set of powers and abilities and a certain set of equipment, and as you earn gold, you can buy much better equipment to upgrade yourself. Now, as you can see on the box, there's 4 archetypal heroes in here. You've got a barbarian there front and center. You've got a elf over here. You've got a dwarf sort of in the background behind the barbarian, and you've got a wizard over here casting spells. So you've got these fighter wizard archetypes. The dwarf is a decent fighter, but he's got some additional skills to help the party, and then the elf kind of walks the line between magic and fighting. So there's 4 sets of spells in the game: earth, air, fire, and water. The elf gets 1, the wizard gets the other 3. And if I remember right, there's an order in which you pick. So if you're playing the elf and the wizard picks their first choice, the elf picks from what's left, the wizard gets the other 2. So wizards, terrible in combat. They don't roll many dice. They don't have great weaponry. They can't wear all the best armor. So you want to keep them back to cast spells. And they're very critical to the party. So as you can see, this just, for me, mind-blowing back at that time. And sadly, we're talking 30 years ago now. But at the time, that this was actually something you could go buy at any store. So when they announced in 2020 they were doing a crowdfunding for the new one, of course, I was very excited about that. So I'm going to put them side by side for you here. And as you can see, when they did the new artwork, they definitely were going to evoke the old artwork. You've got, again, the barbarian front and center. Looks a little bit different on the new box than it does on the old box. You've got your wizard in almost exact same position, same outfit. You've got your dwarf brought a little further forward here so that they represent a little bit better. And then if you look closely at the elf warrior in the background, it's actually female in the new version, not in the old one. So back in the 80s and 90s, people had this foolish idea that only boys would want to play a game system like this. In fact, we've come around here now and finally said, okay, this makes sense. Women will play just as much as men will. So they've got female characters in here as well as male characters. They've done a couple of other updates as they've gone. So what Games Workshop again did the figures, but Games Workshop owns the rights to the Chaos Warriors, the Chaos Warlock, and to the Fimmer, and they were unwilling to release them, is my understanding. So in the new system, they've replaced those figures with something different, and we'll talk about that when we open it up. One other thing I wanted to point out was just a difference in form factor here. So if we lay these down, you can see here the boxes are about the same width. They stand about the same height, a little bit different, not much. But if you put it like this, it's very obvious. The original game, much shorter box. This is much taller, where it's longer here, and this is a little bit shorter in that dimension. So they've just kind of repackaged it in order to make things fit better. No impact on the way the game plays. As a matter of fact, the rules are virtually identical between the two. The other big difference is the way the board is packaged. So the board in this one is just a single fold board. This one is a multi-fold board, I believe. We'll take a look at that when we open it up. So that's a little bit of the background of HeroQuest. Again, I'm just excited that they've updated this for modern times, and we're going to do a comparison, look at what's in this box, and we'll compare figures side by side as we go. So let's take a look at that right now. Okay, let's take a look at what's inside of the core box of the new HeroQuest game system. Pretty snug fit there, a little tough to open. All right, immediately we're greeted with a package. Now this looks like a cardboard wrap. It is. We've got miniatures inside of there, so they're all held in place nice and tightly. And, whoa, a little... Wow, a little too tightly if you ask me. That's just no good. That snapping in and out like that, well, I appreciate it holds the miniature in place. If I paint these, and I intend to, that's going to wear the paint. So I'm not real excited about that. I'm going to have to see what I can do about that. But taking a look inside of here, we've got our heroes. We've got our wizard, our elf, dwarf, and our barbarian. Wow. Wow. I'm actually worried I'm going to damage the figures pulling them out. They're so tightly in there. The sculpts look great on these. I mean, they're very detailed. We'll do a little comparison later to the original HeroQuest sculpts and see how those look. We've got, man, for crying out loud. We got the replacement for the Chaos Sorcerer here. Can't remember what he's called, but he is definitely very evocative. Look at that staff. It's got a nice point on the end of it, the little hook up top. Very cool figure. Additionally, we've got a couple of different figures in here than we had before. So there's a couple of different sculpts. So look at the goblins here, come in a couple of different sculpts, and before they came with different weapons. Same sculpts, game posed, but different weapons. We've got our replacement for the Chaos Warriors here. They all appear to be identical, but again, wow, the level of detail is amazing. Look at this kind of a skull face on that plate mail chest piece. That's, oh, wow. The detail on that shield. You actually see teeth and eyes in that. That is incredible. As usual, Games Workshop outdoes themselves when they're doing these things, but I'm just not excited about the way those are snapping in so hard. Let's take a look at these dice. Wow, those are in there tight too. Okay, these are engraved plastic dice, not deep engraving, but enough that it should be fine. They're not, in my mind, as evocative as the original dice. We have a nice wooden dice with rounded edges in the original set, which I really like. Artwork's not bad. Dice seem pretty standard quality. Let's move that tray aside. Below that, we have another tray inside of another cardboard slide. So let's see what's in there. Okay, that is all of our furniture. Now, this is a big departure from the original game because this furniture is all cast in plastic. Where the original game, you had cardboard pieces held together by plastic. Wow, can't even get them out of there. That's crazy. So, in the original game, we had a plastic top. This didn't actually open because the sides were cardboard, and once they were put together, you really couldn't get them back out easily. So, let's Still very nice furniture pieces. We've got some loose skulls here. We got some rats, just like the original. We can put them on there. Let's see if I can manage to pry that out of there. Wow. All right, that's a nice heavy-duty cabinet. I like the way that looks. The sculpting on the doors and the back is very nice. But again, I mean, it's a heavy, heavy piece. But it's just so doggone hard to put in and out of here. I'm not loving that. I'm going to have to... Oh, goodness, I can't even get that back in there. So we're just going to set this aside. Here's all of our open doors, though. Open doorways are very nice. There's some nice detailing on there. We get the little skull type feature at the top. Maybe that's supposed to be Zargon's face. Nice little sculpting on the stone. So those are very nice, and there's lots and lots of them. Also, I'm sorry, character sheets or cards. Let's take a look at these real quickly. Yeah, these are very evocative of the original. So still got the original sepia tone on them. So, very evocative of the original game. I think that might even be the same artwork. Let's take a look there. We'll have to see if the artwork's changed, but the sepia tone is a nice touch to keep it in line with the original. And then, yeah, you've got your different backs here that tell you whether it's an artifact, equipment, what have you. So, nice deck of cards. Not enough room in there to sleeve them, certainly. They barely fit in there as it is. So no sleeving if we want to use this tray anymore. I'm going to find an alternative to this though, because that's just way too much work to put things in and out every time. So the game board here, yeah, we've got a double fold game board as I expected, because most game boards do this these days. Instead of just a single fold, they fold in half again. So wow, other than that, that artwork looks virtually identical to the original game. Like they didn't take time to upgrade it at all. So that's interesting. Maybe they figured it was an iconic part of the game or something. Now they did move the HeroQuest logo to the other end of the board, so it's on the end instead of the side. So that is one difference. Makes the board a little longer. Takes some of the width out of it. But yeah, as I expected, again, it's a double fold board, which accounts for the box change to some extent. So we've got our Game Master screen, some things that need to be punched out. And do we have anything underneath this platform? No, that is it. So I'm not seeing a whole lot of tile overlays here. Just a handful on this little punch out here. And clearly we've got main steps down into the dungeon. Again, that's a little bit different because that used to be... Oh, there's the spiral stair. Okay, that's what I was looking for, was the spiral staircase there. So that's good. I've got rule book. I've got the initial 10 quests there. And then again, this is the Game Master screen, Zargon screen, so the heroes can't see what's going on behind there. So again, I don't know, not a bad package overall. I have to say, I've got a lot of concerns about the way these miniatures are packaged, though. It's going to be real tough to play the game if it's that hard to pry the characters in and out, and I'm going to have to think twice about painting this. And I don't like that idea. I want to have this game painted because it's loads and loads of fun to play. So anyway, that is the first box, and I will be back in just a moment with the other boxes. Next, we're going to take a look at the Kellar's Keep quest pack and Return of the Witch Lord quest pack. I'll do one at a time, but I'm going to put them both together here because they're kind of small. So, Kellar's Keep, let's see what we've got here. Okay, we've got our quest book right on top. Pretty standard. There's some nice new overlays. These definitely look very familiar. Yeah, very similar to the original things. We got some trapdoors, some blocked walls. This is nice. It's a drop off of a cliff edge. And then some magic casting hands. And this is kind of interesting. It's in 4 pieces. It's like a jigsaw puzzle. The characters have to find and put back together. We've got, again, duplicates of the monsters we've seen, additional orcs, additional goblins, additional these guys. We do have a couple of doors in here. Well, now those are not snapped in hard, so that's interesting to me. So these are closed doors. That one's kind of interesting. Nice big screaming skull on it. And then we've got a wooden door with looks like a magic eye there at the top of it. So those are both very nice quality. Let's see if these guys are... Yeah, they're pretty much as tough to get out as the ones we're out of the base box. And then there's a series of other cards that are in here that would give you some additional gaming options. So again, you see these are exact same miniatures that we had in the main box. Would be nice to get something a little bit different, but I understand it makes it easy. They just cast the same figures and they don't have to worry about the expense of sculpting anything new, right? So we'll take a look at the Witch Lord Quest Pack. Again, we've got our quest book here. New tiles. Yes, I remember this one well. That's one of my favorite tiles from the original game, the skull floor. We've got several sarcophagi, and then on the back we've got a round room, and if I remember right, this one actually rotates. There's only one door out, and it rotates as the characters play, so it's kind of interesting. We've got secret doors here. So some other new things, handful of new cards again. Same skeletons, mummies, and skeletons, zombies, and mummies, and again, just one sculpt of each. Same 2 doors, it looks like, as are in the Kellar's Keep quest pack. So again, makes sense to save money. You're going to cast the same door and put it in there. So that's the contents of those 2. Next, we're going to take a look at the stretch goal box. Now, this new version of HeroQuest was funded through a crowdfunding platform called Hasbro Pulse. Now, Hasbro currently owns Wizards of the Coast, which owned Avalon Hill, which is the producer of the new game. And also Hasbro owned Milton Bradley. So they absorbed the rights to the game, they gave it to Avalon Hill, and Avalon Hill actually is the one that produced this game. So one of the things they decided to do, because it's crowdfunding, they included stretch goals. So you've got this lovely box of stretch goals here. This contains not only alternate gendered heroes for the original 5 heroes, it's got a miniature standee for Sir Ragnar, who's an NPC in the game. It's got multiple new heroes, and it's got some new monsters with it. There's some additional dice in it as well, which is nice because you've got a small pool of dice you use and everybody shares, so it's nice to have an extra set of that. And on top of that, they even put a dragon in it. So new quests that'll handle that, and additionally there are 3 more quest books in here. I don't know exactly how many adventures in each, but there's 3 whole new scenario sets, and there's some new tiles and overlays in here, so it's going to add a little bit of depth to the game. So let's take a look at what's inside of the stretch goal box now. All right, finally we're going to take a look at the stretch goals, as they call this the mythic contents. 4 additional heroes, brand new ones, 18 more monsters, same thing, some more combat dice, again duplicating the dice in the main box, but it's nice to have more. Some more cards, including the 4 character cards for those characters, and then the heroic contents, some game tiles, 3 more quest books, and the 5 miniatures of alternate gender characters, which again, kind of nice to have so you have a choice. So here are our new tiles. This is very interesting. Nice claws holding that cauldron, runes on the ground, nice little green smoke around. Obviously we've got sort of a green fog thing going on here, and that's really nice. It looks like the inside of a tavern. You got a bar, you got several tables. So very nice. We've got our 3 quest books, the Spirit Queen's Torment, Crypt of Perpetual Darkness, and the Prophecy of Telor. Now notice, a couple of these, like I don't recognize this name Teos Abadea, but Stephen Baker is a big name in role-playing, and Joe Manganiello, I think anybody who's watched television or movies in the past decade probably knows who that guy is. So it's nice that he contributed. And oh, look at this. This is kind of exciting. So we do have some extra cards, but I'm taking a look at these figures. These are not the same mummy, skeleton, and zombie figures we had before, so they're different. As a matter of fact, man, look at this new pose on these guys. That same shield, but they're posed much differently. So they did give us alternate sculpts. That is really nice. So I'm pleased with that. Very nice on the alternate sculpts. Again, and these are really in there. Kind of ridiculous. So here's one of our new alternate characters. Not sure exactly what he's supposed to be. I know the orc is a bard, so we've got an orc bard here, and you can see him kind of posing with his foot up on a thing. Look like he's preparing to sing, so that's kind of neat. There's a halfling druid down here, and she's really very bizarre. If you read her background, this arm has kind of a point to it because it's turning into crystal. She's slowly changing into minerals. And I'm not sure what the whole backstory is there, but it should be fun to play. And this, of course, is the big one that I really was interested in, and that is the dragon figure. Pretty nice looking. Notice they had to keep it on a base that was the same size as all the other bases, so he's kind of curled up around a pillar to make that happen. But man, that ridge spike, that is really nice, and some nice detailing in the face here. So very well done miniature, very evocative. I'm glad we got some alternate sculpts here. That makes me happy. A little extra value, it seems like to me, rather than just having the exact same sculpts. And these are, or should be, the 5 alternate gender heroes, plus Sir Ragnar. So yeah, there we go. So the character cards, ooh, that's another change I didn't realize. They've shrunk the character cards down to a smaller size. They used to be a big cardboard piece. They're not anymore. So there's our alternate gender heroes. We got a female dwarf, female wizard, a female barbarian, a male elf, and Sir Ragnar, who's just an NPC. But again, it's a nice addition to have those alternate sculpts. Some people prefer to play, you know, one character gender or another when they play games, so it's nice to be a little more inclusive as far as that goes. So again, I'm very pleased with the value out of this box, not just for 3 more quest books, but for the alternate sculpts and the 4 new heroes, which should add an awful lot to the game. So that's it for unboxing the new HeroQuest. I'm going to do a separate video that's going to compare the original figures to the new figures so we can get a good feel for how much the game has changed from one form to the other. Thanks for joining me on Building Geek Cred, and we will see you next time.